Hello everyone. Now you are waiting for a very interesting Manhwa recap, so do not forget to subscribe to the channel and get a like. Thank you, and we're off. The hero fights the enemy. When he finally defeats him, he sees that it was only an illusion. 22 years ago, everyone decided that if they defeated the demon lord, they could return to reality. During this suicide mission, over 400 people from different countries died, who specifically chose the best people and formed a squad. But 2 years ago they went into battle with the 24th Demon Lord, and all but the hero were defeated. He fought alone, recovering periodically and building up his level. Eventually the guy personally destroyed the 23 remaining overlords. Then he met with the Lord Baal. They fought for 3 days, the player defeating him. But now it turns out to be just an illusion. The guy rushes into battle again and attacks the demon, but this time it's more complicated, because he doesn't even take him seriously. The monster decides to just walk away, not responding to the hero's requests to end it. In the end he is alone and wants it all to end, because he is too tired of it all. Suddenly, the ground beneath the guy's feet collapses and a pop-up sign tells him that he has completed the last mission to break into the demon's castle. As a reward he receives a return and inherits the inventory. People meet 2019 hoping that it will be better than the previous year. But panic grips the world as many people go missing. The number of missing people is approximately 100 million. In Korea, it is assumed that all cases have something in common, related to the Eternal World, an online game with virtual reality. It turns out that all of the missing people were playing this game at the time of their disappearance. Meanwhile, natural disasters begin to happen all over the world. Some kind of red-skinned unknown monsters appear in Asia and later spread around the world. Governments try to fight it, but the monsters appear in large numbers and it is as if it is impossible to exterminate them. 1 month after these creatures appear, 1/10 of humanity is dead. 2 months later, a little boy makes his way to the store for food, but on the way he encounters a monster. He no longer hopes to be saved, but suddenly a man appears, killing the monster. The child recognizes in the man his missing father. There are other players with him. They assume that they have been able to return to the real world. Meanwhile, the hero is still trying to follow the main demon and fighting monsters. But the demon doesn't think the man can defeat him. He says that's where the guy's journey will end. More and more players appear in the real world. Only they are capable of effectively destroying monsters. One professor explains what happened. When it was New Year's Eve, a lot of people were playing the game at the time, and they literally got sucked in there. Because of this, these people gained superpowers. The timing was different. When it was a year in reality, it was only a month in the game. People started playing from the first level, gradually increasing their powers and skills. There is another feature in the real world. Only those who died in the game return. But on the planet, even though the players appeared, the situation gets worse because monsters of different levels above the first level begin to appear. And every month there are more players who have spent more time in the game. People and monsters fight and the situation escalates. At the same time, the hero encounters a boss of 150th level. The guy destroys it. It turns out that this is the 22nd year player, the masked monarch, as they call him. This is what it was before that last encounter with the most powerful demon. The hero returns to the real world. The other players are wary of him and consider him strong. The first thing he does is go to a familiar house and ring the doorbell. It turns out that in the 12th year of the game Yoon Sang-hyuk, lost his friend Yoon Sang-min in battle. His fighting brother died of wounds in his arms and he had to continue the game alone. But now he has returned to the real world and hopes his friend is alive here. And so it turns out. The guy opens the door and they sit down together to drink tea and discuss the situation. Sang-min talks about the rumors about the masked monk. Not knowing that his friend is him, Sang-min talks about how all but the last player has already returned. And even the leader of the American Absolute clan says that the masked monk is the only one capable of destroying the demon lord. They talk about how the world is constantly changing, with higher level monsters and dungeons appearing. Sang-min asks his friend what level he is to be invited to join the Balhae Guild in Korea. But Sang-hyuk knows that this guild has been killing low-level players, and he ended up personally destroying them all in the game. His friend says that the guild is much better now, even though they had a bad reputation, but the hero denies this and demands that the guy leave this bad guild, and if he has a problem, he should tell Sang-hyuk about it. He further confesses that he has reached the maximum level. His friend doesn't believe him, because there have never been known instances in the game when someone has reached maximum level, but Sang-hyuk shows his brother the inventory with different things, then pulls out the mask and admits that the monarch in the mask is him. The guy stops getting experience when he reaches level 300. The brother is thrilled and realizes that this guy is the famous player. He's also surprised that Sang-hyuk can use his inventory when others only have access to the status window and level system. The guy admits that this ability was a reward for the last mission. He also climbs into a space pocket and gives his brother that 54th level a gift, the good paired swords he's used to fighting with. But a problem arises. The guy lacks the necessary strength index. Then Sang-hyuk gives the boy a necklace, a ring, and a bracelet for a strength boost. Sangmin thanks his brother. Meanwhile, in a small village in Japan, a man holds a meeting, summoning someone through magic orbs. They are talking about the fact that the masked monarch has returned and is in Korea. There is still a lot of bureaucracy in the real world, as the returning player must report to the Soba and get on the register to get the necessary document. Sang-hyuk notices that there are many players around, and they are all wearing armor and carrying some sort of item. He is surprised, but it is explained to him that all of these items were created in reality, and from the monsters do not drop the reward as in the game. So people have to find ways to create gear, but the items created in the world are much worse than they were in the game. The monarch remembers a man he wants to see, and asks Sangmin to find him. He is referring to one of the Dusky Blacksmiths, an organization that is famous for its wares. Lots of players have ordered gear from them, for they were the best. They were even included among the chosen ones during the organization of the Demon Walk. The couple walks into the building and Sang-hyuk asks about Lee Chol-woo. The administrator tells him that he can only meet the man by appointment, but the player, wanting to see his friend, runs into the basement workshop, ignoring the administrator's shouting that he is forbidden to do so. Apparently, they have known each other well since the game. Sang-hyuk retrieves the hammer, which previously belonged to the blacksmith. He stipulates that he must help him with something before the guy returns the tool to him. It turns out that in the game Monarch paid the blacksmith with very rare materials to make him a custom mask. That's how they met. They all sit around the table and chat. Sang-hyuk talks about what happened in the Eternal World. He fought alone against an army of demons for 2 years, but he never managed to defeat the main one. He then tells the smith his stipulation, that the latter make him a VIP client and serve him out of turn, while also giving a good item to his brother. Sang-hyuk returns the hammer to the man while sharing with him the accessories that increase his parameters. Sangmin wonders why this hammer is so important. It turns out that it is an artifact of the Twilight Blacksmiths, an unsightly hammer, and it has many unique abilities. Chol-woo also tells the guy about his brother, how he was legendary in the world of the game, and he could do anything. And mask is the blacksmith's best work. Next, Sang-hyuk asks if a castle has appeared in Seoul. He's back and wants to get into action. It turns out that there is a monster castle instead of the National Museum of Korea, and the monarch wants to take it over. But the area is cordoned off and there are too many military lookouts around to make sure there are no breaches. Chol-woo tells the player's brother that in the game he not only seized the castle of the Vampire Queen, but also made her his slave and renamed the structure the Castle of the Mask. In the real world, however, in Seoul, almost in the center appeared Horror Castle, and the player plans to somehow capture it. He talks about how it's not safe to live in their current home, because monsters are greedy players who find out that that's where the masked monarch lives might break in. So it is safer and better for them to take over the castle and live there. They cover themselves with invisibility cloaks and pass through the cordon unnoticed. The eddy reach the castle walls, and from the outside it seems as if it hasn't even been attacked yet, because the returning players are still weak. It turns out that the castle is full of succubi and incubi that affect the mind, and there are no suitable ingredients in this world to create amulets against them. But not too long ago, a mountain appeared in the center of London where a mine of mana stones, an important ingredient, was found, so potentially people could come to create items like in the game. They reach the castle walls, but they are too high. Then Sang-hyuk puts on his armor and flies to the top with his brother. At the same time, the succubus in the castle notices that he has visitors after a long wait. The monarch warns his brother that they need to behave with extreme caution. They smell a pleasant floral scent, but Sang-hyuk says they should hold their breath when the smell is particularly strong, for it is demon pollen, and if it gets to a man and intoxicates him, that man is finished. His brother is weaker than he is, and so the monarch gives him a ring of mental protection, at the same time assuring him that he himself can even deal with an army of succubi and incubi. They are not the most dangerous enemies. Nevertheless, they surround Sangmin, pretending to be beautiful girls. He is completely lost under their influence, but his brother orders the girls to leave, threatening reprisals. They run away in a panic, and Sang-hyuk tells his brother that he is disappointed in him, for they were only inferior succubi. They move through the corridors of the castle without fear, and the monarch says he expected more from the queen. At this point they are walking through a hall decorated with armor, and with only his armor on, Sang-hyuk sees a succubus trying to get away from him. But he chases after the demon, and when he catches it, he recognizes Lilith in the succubus, which makes him very surprised. It turns out they've met before in a game and fought for a long time. She doesn't want to admit right away that it's her, so the hero has to click on her. But it really turns out to be Lilith. Sang-hyuk wasn't sure, because he remembered a more adult ladder, and now there is practically a little girl of small stature in front of him. Their dialogue is interrupted by a rumble and the appearance of more succubi and incubi. They come to Lilith's aid and issue an ultimatum for the uninvited guests to leave quickly. But the hero disagrees, and a fight ensues. In the heat of battle, the monarch fears for his brother, so he advises him to flee while he continues to fight. The demons attack him, but he moves too fast for them to hit him, so the advantage is on his side. The guy dodges all the attacks and eventually takes Lilith hostage and offers to talk now. They talk and Sang-hyuk asks about the castle. It turns out that Lilith has only been here 100 days, which is why she is in such a young state. Nevertheless, there are succubi of the highest rank in the room with him. At one point they open their eyes and realize they are here. The hero notes that there were more of them in the game. The player proceeds to do what he came to do. He pulls out the construct of submission and demands that Lilith sign it. If this happens, she becomes his servant forever. He talks about how they have to go for it, because no one else can protect them if someone else gets into the castle. Sang-hyuk decides to change the contract and make it valid as long as Lilith is in her young state. Then they can break the contract or extend it. Lilith agrees and signs with her blood. All the demons of the castle are now at the mercy of the monarch. Meanwhile, a group of players in America are fighting monsters. It is the Absolute Guild, and at its head is Richard Paulson, the Sun Knight. One of his subordinates hails him and reveals new information. They become aware that the masked monarch and has already taken over the demon castle. The whole world becomes aware of the return of the legendary hero. All the newspapers and news channels only talk about it. But not everyone is happy about it, because this player has a lot of enemies, which he got back in the game. For example, after a while, he is found by a group from the Balhi Guild. Contrary to expectations, they are not going to take revenge on the player, but only swear that nothing they did in the game will happen again. They apologize to him, and Sang-hyuk is willing to forgive them, but on one condition: they must give an interview to the world tomorrow in which they talk about everything they did in the game. If they don't comply with this condition, the guy promises to give them hell on earth. The guild agrees, because there's nothing else for them to do. Sang-hyuk isn't really that evil, he just thinks that hardships harden, and if the guild can handle it, the monarch will even help them and partly respect them. Meanwhile, reporters storm the gates of the castle, wanting to ask a few questions and interview the legendary hero. Standing nearby is a disgruntled director of the Players Association, Oh Maya. His subordinates advise him not to mess with this man, but he arrogantly ignores all recommendations. He knocks on the gate and shouts that Monarch should have dealt with him first. Suddenly the gate swings open and the director is about to celebrate his victory, when suddenly his subordinate notices that pink intoxicating pollen begins to appear. The director does not understand the warnings and does not know what the subordinate is talking about. The aide, on the other hand, recommends that all the gathered people immediately hold their breath and run away from the entrance. Only Oh Myung doesn't have time to follow the advice, and is already running around the field in his underwear, experiencing hallucinations. People start taking pictures and videos of this. Meanwhile, Sangmin and Sang-hyuk observe everything and come to the conclusion that just because you're a big shot doesn't give you the right to come to the gate of someone else's house and behave rudely. Suddenly, Monarch receives a call on his phone from an unknown number. It turns out to be an old acquaintance, Jay, the leader of the Black Chamber of the Eternal World. She wonders if the player has any interesting things, because an auction is planned soon, and he definitely needs money in this world. Sang-hyuk decides to sell the woman a unique ring after all. They exchange at Seoul Station, and the guy ends up with a crate of 9 billion won. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel not to miss the next retelling.